Today's April 23rd, 2017. Today we have a very special guest, my friend José Albino Sanchez, who is working at Cardinal Health in accounting as a senior accountant in the medical segment. Welcome, José.
Oh, hi, DH. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm happy.
Nice. How is living in Dublin, Ohio so far?
I would say that the Dublin is a suburb of Columbus. So, like here is very safe, and all the houses are really fancy because that's the nice side of town, and it's really close to my work, so I'm able to bike to work.
And you work at Cardinal Health, which is a healthcare company. And in fact, I'm very familiar with the company because I have a first aid kit that is from Cardinal Health. Talk to us about, for the people that don't know what Cardinal Health does, what does the business do and what kind of role are you in?
So, Cardinal Health. I'm working the medical segment, and the Cardinal Health is divided in two parts: the pharmaceutical and the medical. Pharmaceutical comprises about like 90% of the company, and the medical 10%. But since the company is investing a lot of money in the medical segment because profits they are higher than in the other side, where you would see only like a 1% margin, whereas in the part where we provide supplies for hospitals across the U.S. to allow them to like have cheaper products and then at a good quality still. Um, my job there is to keep track of the purchases that are made to hospital through their GPOs, which are group purchasing organizations, in which those organizations enlist numerous hospitals across the United States, and then as a group, they are able to better negotiate lower pricing than they would do if they were alone. So, like my job specifically, just to keep track of what the hospitals purchase and what they return, and then based on that, I give a certain percentage of rebates to the GPOs.
Talk to us about the dynamics between Cardinal Health and the hospitals in the United States. For example, someone that might not be familiar with healthcare might be thinking, well, why don't hospitals buy supplies directly from Johnson& Johnson? Why do they have to go through Cardinal Healthcare? Talk about that.
Oh well, I mean that would be ideal and in the perfect world, but there's hundreds and hundreds of hospitals across the nation, and one hospital, like if they were to Johnson and Johnson and they were to ask for like supplies, first of all, like they have to buy in bulk, and second of all, if they're they don't have any leverage to negotiate pricing, so like they effectively become like a price takers in the market. But if they like all combine forces in the GPOs, they're able to have a better voice when they sit in that negotiation table with those firms.
So, would group purchasing organizations, GPOs, be basically a collection of hospitals that come together and basically buy volume?
Yeah, and then Cardinal provides that volume that they want, and they have like specific like needs, like they want like combos of I want gloves with this type of equipment in a specific way, and then Cardinal like combines across like many companies. They look for all those products and then they put them together and send it to them. So like it's a matter of convenience.
Now, Jose, I wanted to talk to you about, how you came to this path, and that might be a little bit philosophic conversation, but there's not that many people coming out of the womb wanting to become a senior accountant at Cardinal Health. Any particular episodes that motivated you to pursuing a career as an accountant at Cardinal Health?
Well, I would say that at Cardinal, when they hired me, they didn't hire me for a specific role. Like they're what they told everyone there was like, we're here to find good people, and if we can get good people, we're gonna then use them. Well, look, we're gonna find a job for them in a way that makes a difference for the company. Like we don't really care about like your skill set right now because anything that we need you to do, we can teach you. So when I was actually when I was putting my preferences, the last one I put was accounting. But now that they put me there, I think I'm glad because when I put it in as my last choice, I was avoiding it because like like people had the preconception that accounting is boring and that you have to like avoid it, and I was avoiding it but I couldn't. And now that I am in it, like I think that's a really valuable experience that I'm getting and that I can get to add to my resume and will help me like going forward in the future where I'm when I look for something that's actually more closely to where I was looking in the first place.
Gotcha. So that goes to show you that sometimes what you think might be boring might actually end up being really fun in what you do in the future. Would you say so?
Yeah, I would say so. And then also like you have more skill set than you would have on the other side where I would have gotten the job I want in the first place. I would never have gotten the understanding of like the accounting side of the job, and I would just have avoided it.
I want to talk to you about, how the HR team at Cardinal Health was placing you into accounting. Did you ever go back and ask them, hey, I had put this as my last preference and I was placed in, and I'm actually glad that I was placed in, but how did you guys, figure this out for me?
Why actually I was having a, like a honest conversation with my supervisor and my manager, and they asked me like what do I thought about the job, and I told them that it wasn't my first choice, but I'm glad that I was there because I was learning many like more accounting, and that certainly builds my skills and my resume. And they told me that my job, even though it says accounting, it's like a hybrid between finance and accounting. So it's not that far, but still, I mean, in a way, I could say that they're building me to move to the next step, and maybe they needed me in that place at that time because like they had the person that was leaving that job and they had to train me like really quick, and they needed cover for that. So like if you're when you're part of a team, you have to do the job that is needed. I think I was able, like, I appreciated the fact that I was able to be honest with them and they were like understanding and supporting.
Jose, is it with pretty much every applicant that the company is going to eventually decide where they're going to be placed in, or are there specific paths that people can apply to and only apply to that path?
Well, I would say that if you're coming from college, they have two programs: an immersion program where you're set up in a rotational program of 3 years, and then they move you from city to city in different jobs, and then after that, the idea is that you will move into a leadership position, a lower leadership position, but you are on course to move as the years go by. And then the other one is just a general pool of we're gonna take the best people we can hire, and then we're gonna use them to fill the needs of the company. And then I was hired in that second batch of people that they just hired me, and then they find whatever they needed to cover.
Gotcha. We're going to be talking about your interview process actually. You mentioned being part of that second batch. Talk to us about your interview process, first of all. How did you figure about Cardinal Health? And also, what was your interview like?
So I found that the company in Go Irish, which is the platform where jobs are listed for students on Notre Dame, and I just sent my resume, and a couple of weeks later, I like usually recruiters just email you, and if you get so many of them that it doesn't make really a difference. But this time they were different because they were calling me to my personal cell phone, and they don't only called once, but they insisted a couple times. So I tried to get hold back of them, and the day that after insisting for playing tag for a few days, because like sometimes she called and I wasn't available, and then I called and they weren't available, but they never gave up. And once we got in the to actually make the call at that moment, they set up the interview and planned for me to like fly to Dublin to go to the interview at the place. So I thought that they were like really interested in me, and also that they were really efficient. Like they were not like wasting my time by making me jump through like countless interview like steps where like they, like it happens that sometimes they make you make a paper, and then from those papers they choose like this many candidates, and then they add another filter and keep adding filters. And this process was very direct and efficient. So I like them because of that.
Gotcha. And so, are you being honest with me in saying that the only way that you found out about the company was through a recruiting platform?
Oh yes, in Notre Dame. I mean, when you're a senior and you're trying to get a job, like you send your resume to everyone that you see at hand, because like I mean, to be honest, like you're graduating, you have needs, you need housing, your student loans are going to activate in a couple of months from now, and I my only filter with a job was like I want to work at a company where I know like that I'm doing quantitative work, where I can like use my problem solving skills to make things better, and also that like the whole like business is solid. And then that would like give me the confidence to know that if I wanted to stay there, I am able to move like upwards in a company that's solid, and that also like I think that would be highly correlated with a higher chance of success going forward. So like that was my process there.
And sometimes relationships are born randomly like that. You don't necessarily find yourself there deliberately, but one way or another, it just really fits in like a puzzle. And I think that's how you found Cardinal Health. Could you give me a rundown of your day to day schedule at the organization as a senior accountant?
So I usually get I work close to 8:30, and then I start at 9. And usually like my first hours are I just spend them brainstorming and reading articles online about the company, of how the company is doing. Like that has no correlation with my actual job, but I think it's useful to be up to date. And then I also, since even though my job is as an accountant and I was an economics major, I always have the drive to make things more efficient, and re- by reducing both the time that you need to accomplish tasks, and also by like better using the technology that we have. So like for example, like actually this past week, the company had like my team, years now, like 2 years now, they always spend so much time waiting for the data machine. We use SAP, and they when they were like downloading data, they had to run like the every every contract one by one and wait by them. And then in the time that I usually spend in the morning, my boss, my manager asked me if it was possible to like make those the queries that bring the data of the contracts run overnight, so that when we come back the next day, they're already made. So that kept like burning in my mind, and I kept researching it, and I was able to actually learn how to do it. And then I showed my team, and they later praised me on the team meeting. So like I can say that the first part of my day is it's not very formulated. I just spend it like surfing through the web to see like what things can be done to make our process better. And then once it's like 11 a.m., then I actually focus on doing my payments until it's 5. And from like 11 to 5, then I would say that the job is very straightforward of like following a specific process to fill out our payouts because like the things that they want, the specific things that they want is already delineated in the contracts that were signed. So there's not much leeway for me there.
Gotcha. So it's a blend of a strict process that comes later in the day, and there's a sort of a random personal initiative task that begins in the earlier half of the day, which is where you're trying to find inefficiencies and take personal ownership and initiative to accomplish those. Would that be a good summary of your schedule?
Yes, that would be a good summary of my skill.
Talk to us about your peers. It could be senior accountants, it can be junior accountants, it can be your boss. What are they like? Are they similar to you? And what makes them good or terrible to work with?
Well, I am the youngest person in my team, and by a huge difference. Like people in my team are usually in their 40s, their 50s. So I think I have been able to make a difference by with the use of technology because they have the experience and that had been a lot of years in the job. But I think if you do your job for many years, it comes a time where you get very comfortable in your process and you don't change things. You just accept them as they are and you follow like your cookie cutter process. And since I'm new and I don't know how to do things, sometimes when they were teaching me, I always like ask like, so why do you do that? Like it seems to me that maybe that's a waste of time. And sometimes it happens that they give me like most of the time actually they give me good explanations like, oh, we do this because X or Y, and then it's like it's understandable. But there have been times like for example the one I told you about how I learned to use the software to better use our time, where I was able to like, oh well, we don't need to do things as you always have been doing them. So I think like as a youngest person, I maybe have the drawback of not being as experienced, and also that everyone else is an accountant except me, that I studied economics. But then I used my background of economics to indirectly make things more efficient. So that's how things are in with my peers.
Jose, talk to us about the dynamic between what you studied in university, which is different from your title as an accountant.
Well, I would say that as an economics major, you are not specifically trained for for a certain path, but with your with the exercises that you're given in your classes, you're challenged the whole 4 years to try to come with solutions. So I would say that as an accountant, the main thing that you need is the love for puzzles. And as an econ major, like you have that, and maybe you don't know how to close the books, but you can learn that. And once like after like you as me like after you suffer like the first few months where you don't know their terminology, I feel like I'm getting to a point where I'm halfway there, and once I pass like a few more months, I would be as fluent as them in their language. So I think an economics major is very a very good choice because then you can move into almost any field.
Gotcha. So you mentioned the type of people that you work with, and they all seem excellent. Now, talk to us about, what kind of people that might not really fit in with the culture of the organization or might not be a great partner to work with, and you're generally left miserable because there might be personality differences between you and the organization or, that coworker and yourself.
Well, I will say that it's really up to every person to feel in a good environment because as an accountant, like I rarely see my supervisors. I have my own contracts. Everyone has like their own contract. So like you do your job by yourself. Like you don't have no one telling you how to do things. Well, they give you, you have to follow that contract. But if you follow that contract by reading it, you're basically, you don't have anyone that's on top of you. But a person but to succeed in that position, like I think the best person would be someone that takes initiative by himself, that is organized by himself. Because like I never have my boss asking me like, oh, so how are your contracts, like are you gonna be able to finish them before time? Like you don't get that until like the very last day. So you have to be organized in making a plan at the beginning of the month of like, oh, I'm going to accomplish this task by this date, and then this task by this date, and by doing that I'll be able to complete everything with ample time at the end. So you need someone organized, someone that likes to work, can work by alone by with long periods of time, and also that is has like the drive to get things right, even though like complications come in the way. Because like my payouts should be very straightforward, but like the way things had been done in the past, there been like the process was wrong. Like they misinterpreted the contracts that were signed, and the payouts had been made incorrectly. So like that's a bit of the frustration that we have, is that I'm finding myself doing revenue recoveries and then fixing for mistakes that people were that were before me did. And it seems to me that like that's a never ending part of my job. Because if that wasn't there, like it would be very straightforward. But then, as I sometimes jokingly tell my boss, like, well, if revenue recoveries didn't exist and people didn't messed up at the way things were done, probably they wouldn't have as many accountants here, and I wouldn't be hired because I'm the newest guy. So it's a good thing also to be cognizant of that.
Gotcha. Jose, are there any fantasies about the job that you want to dispel? For example, maybe accounting might seem like a really quantitative skill set to have, and it might be really engaging. You're working with numbers all the time, but in reality, it might not actually be all that exciting because everything is so structured, everything is so very standard.
Well, I would say the biggest drawback is that like I had like the first months where you're learning how to follow your payouts and complete your contracts are, it's interesting always, because you are you're struggling to get things right. But once you get things right, as it happened to me like last month, I thought like, oh well, this is getting boring now, because I just basically doing the same things over and over again. So that's when I you have to like think outside the box and change the way your payouts are done, and to keep things interesting. Like maybe also like you go in the internet, and you try to better understand how Excel works, to try to like, let's say you learn how to program with VBA, and then by doing that you are able to like simplify like a very repetitive task that you have. And like those small things keep you engaged in your job. And so in summary, like things can get pretty repetitive, but then it's up to you, and you have the power and the time to go and try to spice it up. So as an example, like there's this GPO that's one of the biggest ones. And like the process that they had in the past was that to get a detailed like breakdown of the sales of each contract, they made one tab for each for, for each. And that ended up being like an Excel spreadsheet with like 40 tabs. And I thought that was like very inefficient use of time, because then you have to go like tab by tab, try to clean the sales that were not actually part of them, and then trying to like subtract the returns. And that was like very time consuming, and took like maybe like 4 or 5 days after you like revised it. So then I thought like, well, I think that instead of doing that, we can take all the data and then put like use them identifying numbers to throw the data in one tab, and then from there we can use like the sum if sum if functions to identify like what cells go to where, and then by doing that, like you only do that cleanup once, because when you clean it, like it's only one like VLOOKUP that goes through all the data once, and then you take out the ones that are not part of the database. So I mean, that kept me interested this month since I was making that change, and I still got the same numbers, and it took me way more time that I would have done the other in the old process, because I was learning how to make that work. But then next month, I think I will probably be able to do a job that took 5 days in the past, and then make it in two going forward, or even one, depending on how much I improve my skills.
How important do you think it is, Jose, to stay engaged with the job and spice it up?
I think that's the thing that keeps you going forward, because if you are that type of accountant that just go and you do your things the same way every month, for once like you will burn out, and like a second, like that's not how like you move forward in the that's not how your boss will notice you. Like, okay, like you get to your job, like you accomplish your task, and like you meet your expectations, but then that's not the person that gets promoted to the next step, and then the next step afterward. Like the person that gets promoted is the one that tries to see like the longer picture, and tries to make to be a better like as important player in your team. So it's very important to try to be innovative, even though like it might not lead you to, most of the time it leads nowhere, but just that fact that you try and people see you trying, I think builds respect.
Gotcha, Jose. I'm going to give you a chance to say some good things about your organization at Cardinal Health. If you could talk to someone who isn't familiar with the organization at all, give us a brief description of what makes the organization great. Really sell us the great things about that organization.
Well, I really like my job because the environment is not very strict, and you have flexibility to your job in your own timing. I have one of my team members had a problem with her son that's sick, and then my boss allows her the flexibility to do her work from home, and then she's able to fulfill her responsibilities and with her family, and also with the company, and she's accommodated, and no one thinks anything less of her because she does her job at home. And just seeing that is very reassuring for me, because like in the future it could happen that I'm the one that needs to do that, and then by seeing it I get the idea, okay, I have that support if it happens to me. I also like the fact that we get, I think we get more vacation than the average company, and then you never get the pressure from your manager of like, oh, you cannot take your vacation these days because we have to complete this certain task. No, like if someone wants to take vacation for a certain like family reason, other people like step up and then they cover for them. So I guess in that way, like I could say that we are not, you go to your job, and then you don't go there to like try to shine and then outstage others, but you go there to like try to do your best, and by being a team member you are noticed.
Gotcha. Now, you're going to take some time to sell us your job. What makes people want to become like Jose and become a senior accountant?
uh, I would say that pursuing a major in accounting and then a job as an accountant, it's a very good choice because it's safe. Like there's always job. There's always like positions open in accounting. It's the one of the fields that it's easier to jump after college. Like you don't have to struggle as much as other majors that are more diverse. Like since the path what you're taught in school is like more related to what you're gonna do afterward. For you, I would just say that my job is good because pay is good, the job is safe, and then you're able to. There's always like some position for accounting in other places, you know.
And I really like that answer, Jose, because it's very realistic. Because let's be honest, we go to college with the expectation that we're going to go out there and make money and use that money to pay rent, pay for food. So we've got to have employment in mind. We've got to have the wage level in mind. So, why not pursue accounting as a safe choice for pursuing a job that's also, engaging? You can spice it up.
When I was looking for a job as an econ major, I noticed that when the accountants and the finance majors were looking for employment, it was really very straightforward for them because it's easy. Like their unemployment rate is really low, and when you go to college, like we get like such big loans that you once you're graduating, like you get the pressure of like they're gonna activate soon. I have to pay for my rent. I have to pay for my fees, and you have to have the peace of mind that you're gonna be able to support yourself and meet all your needs and wants. An accounting major that would lead to an accounting job is a very safe choice that you can make.
And I think Jose mentioned this already, but I'm going to repeat it. It's the fact that you can always spice up your job, even in accounting, which might be perceived as boring. And also, there's upward mobility. You're not going to be doing strictly, mundane accounting tasks all day. You're going to be going up in terms of promotion, and you could lateral over to other positions within healthcare, within the organization itself, or maybe, to something completely different. But nevertheless, people are going to need accountants.
That's true. That's true because like in my company, like they promote that. Like I could move to tax next year if I want to, or to finance and planning and analysis. So like I have that. I build my skill set as an accountant, and then that will make me a better employee anywhere. And even if you're like just graduating high school, like I think it is not that hard to get a job like as an accounting clerk or as an account receivable specialist. And from there, like I think for a high school graduate, that pays well, and that experience will make you way more marketable than the kid that after high school just go to college and then he's graduating. Because it happened to me that I didn't have as a good resume because I never worked during my college years, and then now that I'm working, I have one of my team members who is she's older. She worked first after high school, and then as an accountant in Cardinal, and then she went back to school, and from there now she managed to like being in a position of leadership. But it was because like she got to see the job firsthand and also had experience beforehand that her college experience was way more productive than mine in that way.
And I think employers always value experience and really just groundwork more than, an educational degree that you get or some classes that you've taken because, it's the real life. You've actually experienced it, you've actually succeeded in it. So that's your proof for your value as an employer, as an employee. Whereas if you do it great in a class or if you get, honors in a degree, that just means that you did really well on a particular major, you did well in school, but that doesn't necessarily directly translate to real work. Now, Jose, I'm going to go back to that point about you saying that economics is a great major for pursuing a broad class of jobs that would be classified as quantitative and demanding. Would you say that there are any strict educational requirements for getting your job? Because I'm sure that some accounting jobs actually require an accounting degree?
That just depends in what area they send you to. Like I think since they knew I'm not an accounting major, they were like even though they sent me to the accounting segment, my job is like in between the finance and the accounting. But then those that are like fully accounting that work they work right beside us. They you do need to have your CPA once you're graduating college. I mean, they might give you a little leeway of like trying to finish your requirements since like you need 150 credit hours, but you have to be like really close to that step because like without your knowledge from those classes, like you cannot complete your task. Like in my position, that is a little bit more all over the place.
Right. So definitely go out there and read the job description and also talk to the managers. I'm sure they'll be familiar with what kind of educational requirements are required to apply. But for Jose's position specifically, it's within a team that is sort of a hybrid between accounting and finance, which is why it had a looser educational requirement. Whereas, the full blown accounting department is going to need accountants, and that might require an accounting degree, possibly a CPA degree that comes from an examination that you take. Now, Jose, we're going to be talking about any particular classes or majors you recommend for honing those quantitative skills.
Well, I would say that I would recommend people to, if they can, major in math. Take as many math classes as you can stomach, because like that will help you in any field that you choose in the afterward. Sciences are always in very high demand. Like the nuclear scientists that we have in our company, like I think they're very well compensated and also have very like interesting jobs.
Okay, that was it, Jose. We can't thank you enough for joining us today. Some of the audience tuning in will identify their passion with your occupation as a senior accountant and pursue that as a goal, perhaps wanting to join your organization, Cardinal Health. And that's always a great feeling to be having. Now, if you could give one final message to those people wanting to become an accountant, what would that be?
I will tell them that there's always position opening up. So if you desire to actually major in accounting, you will be able to like find a place there because accountants are always needed. Well, and if you come to Cardinal, know that we're a healthcare firm and health is very much promoted. So I hope to see you in the gym maybe next year after you graduate.
And say hi to Jose Sanchez. He's going to be in the what department?
In the medical department. Yeah, and say hi to me when you see me.
That was it, folks. Thank you, Jose. Talk to you soon.
Bye.